Artificial intelligence technologies are redefining high-stakes decision-making to amplify human potential. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Bowman, Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Brain. Welcome to this presentation on empowering human decision-making with collaborative AI solutions, presented by Anaplan. Quick reminder, there will be an audience question and answer session at the end of this presentation. Audience members are encouraged to submit their questions at any time during the presentation by clicking on that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So, AI is streamlining workflows and optimizing decisions, demand planning to constraint planning, and all the way to revenue recognition. Today, through a real-world example, we're going to dive into the practical applications of AI-driven scenario planning and analysis. We'll learn how supply chain leaders are utilizing these solutions to revolutionize planning and decision-making processes. It's all about turning supply chain planners into decision shapers. With that, I want to introduce our speakers for today. Angela Ying is Vice President of Business Operations at NVIDIA. With over 25 years at the company, she focuses on integrating AI-driven solutions into enterprise operations. In a career spanning demand planning, sales, and large-scale business transformation, Angela has played a key role in implementing AI and automation to improve forecasting, streamline decision-making, and drive operational excellence. Ye Zhao is Senior Director of Business Operations with NVIDIA. She's a seasoned business leader with over 20 years of experience in operations, sales planning, and process improvement. At NVIDIA, she focuses on re-engineering business processes to improve efficiency and support growth. Ye has led sales planning strategies, managed complex operations, and implemented AI-driven automation to enhance forecasting and decision-making. And EJ Tavella is Anaplan's Senior Vice President, Supply Chain. With over 25 years of strategic and operational experience, EJ has held many roles, including supply chain practitioner, S&OP software founder, strategic consultant, and advisor to supply chain leaders. Prior to joining Anaplan, EJ was the managing director at Accenture, where he led delivery for the West Analytics and supply chain practice. EJ previously co-founded Steel Wedge Software. So with that, I want to turn over the presentation to EJ Tavella. EJ, take it away.
Thanks, Bob. Really appreciate the introduction. And Ye and Angela, I'm super excited to be here today and collaborating with you on this presentation. It's been a pleasure working with you. And I think the story we're going to talk about is really going to resonate. Obviously, everybody's talking about analytics, and I think understanding how we're using it in practice is really going to be interesting to drill into today. I'll start off just with a quick introduction to supply chain at Anaplan. I think it's something that's worth educating the audience on and just giving you a quick update. We are a leader in this space. We're over $1 billion SaaS software company, and we're doing about $250 million in supply chain revenue. We've got a ton of supply chain customers, almost 400 of them now globally across really most industries. Couple things that I want to highlight here, right? One is we're making a massive investment in the product. And this is something that's a theme, I think, as we get into more AI conversations today. AI is expensive, is something that's going to change the game for all of us, but there's investments that need to be made. And I think we recognize that as a business. And so we're going to be investing $500 million on top of our regular annual development spend over the next 4 years to make sure we're bringing the best of the world. And that's going to be through partnerships like we're talking about today with NVIDIA, but also stuff that we're building out internally. So super excited to share that. As we drill into more, we will get into the details. I want to highlight a couple things that we're focused on today within the platform, is really thinking through how we integrate, I'll say, analytics holistically across the overall planning process, right? And that brings together a whole suite of ways to support decision-making and automation. At the end of the day, we want to use things like Gen AI to help with co-planners, visualization, access to data. We want to bring tools like optimization. We want to integrate things AI, ML to make intelligent decision-making that can leverage external data and internal data to help drive decisions, to drive forecasting accuracy, to help drive simulations. And then we're bringing in additional new theoretic insights through analytics that will help to drive really, I'll say, forward-looking intelligence. We'll talk about a few of those today when we think about how we can start to use where Gen AI and analytics are heading in the future. So with that, I want to jump in and really start telling the story with Ye and Angela around how we've collaborated NVIDIA to help support their journey. So just to give a quick peek here, and then I'll hand this off to Ye and we can kind of jump in. I think we wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the journey that we've had together over the last 5 years. A couple of these things, I think we need to give the audience an explanation of what they are. When we talk about MPS, we talk about capacity planning. I think when we talk about RBP, we talk about requested build planning, which is the consolidation of the demand plan, getting to a requested supply plan for the business. And Ye, maybe I'll hand it off to you and we can sort of talk through a little bit about what that journey has looked like, and where it started and where you're getting to today.
Thank you, EJ. So this NVIDIA's journey with Anaplan, actually, it ties pretty closely to our planning process. For those who are not very familiar with, the regular planning process of NVIDIA. So we usually start with a different kinds of demand forecast. I mean, it could be a bottoms-up forecast, could be a sell-through forecast, could be just, and then adjust, final forecast. And then from that demand forecast, our team, Angela's team, will come up with, we call it requested build plan, which is what the RBP stands for. It stands for requested build plan. That build plan will be passed, to our supply chain, the operational group, and they will do a lot of planning. So you see those different other modules; those are all related to all kinds of supply planning to tackle different challenges. And when they finish their planning, they usually will send a supply back to our demand planning group. And then that's where the demand planning group will perform supply and demand matching and make different decisions. For example, could be a pack out decision, could be a customer allocation decision. And then from there, the signals will send downstream for different teams to execute. So that's the just high level view of our planning processes. So each of these models and box represents some kind of challenges, and we have been trying to address those challenges. Just to pick a few, so for example, the country of origin, that box, which was relatively recent and probably is all hot and new today in today's world as well.
Yep.
In many years ago, in the past, our planning process is basically a global supply supporting a global demand. But recent years, regulations or tariff breaks that. So a product, that's made in certain regions cannot be shipped to, support the demand from certain regions, right? Or it could be shipped to certain regions, but it has to, you have to pay, a lot of tariff related to that. So soft restrictions versus hard restrictions. That makes planning very difficult. So that's why we started this. We work with Anaplan and enable this new model so that we can basically call out adding the country of origin, that important attributes into the planning aspect. So from the demand side, we will have to separate our demand by country of origin. And then when supply is committing back, which we are still working on, it will also need to specify the country of origins. There are also other boxes, for example, channel like sales bundle planning. That's also related to how our NVIDIA business evolved to a much more complicated business models. And then we need to use a system, come up with a system solution to address those challenges. What's most relevant to today's topic will be the customer allocation 2.0, because that's the first product we truly build AI to the solution. Before that, a lot of the boxes are more like getting all the information together, enabling the user to navigate through all the different data points, but the user itself needs to make the decision themselves.
Yep.
But starting from customer 2.0, allocation 2.0, we actually come up with solutions to have a system, AI or engine, try to come up with suggestions. It's still a co-pilot, a co-planner model, because the user still needs to tell the engine what I want. The engine will come back with the results. but the user will still need to review and approve. But that's the first step. We made some breakthrough of customer allocation 2.0. So this brings up, what we are going to talk about, which is co-opt. So this is a breakthrough technology we implemented for these AR solutions. Co-opt, actually, this one has been set like 23 records in route optimization in the past 3 years. This is our immediate own technology. So when we were trying to add AI into our customer allocation, we run into a lot of challenges. And in the end, we actually turned to our own solutions, which is co-opt. And the co-opt basic is GPU-based, is accelerated computing, and it has, sophisticated optimization, and it's very flexible to be deployed and implemented to address all the different challenges. And our customer allocation is flagship products. And Jensen actually promoted this one, mentioned this one at the last Computex. And since when we have been working with all the different partners, including Anaplan, and try to expand those solutions and to address all the different problems we are facing today. So the progress we have made with Anaplan, with co-op and Anaplan for customer allocation, I'm just going to go through like 3 aspects. AI is a journey. It's not, we are at the beginning of it. So what we do is we try to identify what we could do and all the different problems we can address as of now, basically breaking into smaller problems, and so that we can pick up momentum as we address each individual problems. The first thing we address, and that's the first thing we turn to co-opt, is accelerated computing. For us to do customer allocation, there's an important concept, for the system to be able to suggest, allocation decisions. We have this concept called segmentation. The idea is straightforward. You have a demand, you have different kinds of demand. Could be a forecast, could be an order, could be something we already committed to the customer in the past. We need to segment it. And based on the different business needs or different target, and we will assign a priority. System will assign a different priority to all these different segmentations. And therefore, system can suggest how to best redistribute the supply to support the demand. However, the segmentation process it takes a long time with the previous solution. It takes 3 hours just to do the segmentation, which makes it very hard for user adoption. Users are not going to be sitting there waiting for 3 hours. And a lot of them just decided, I'm just going to do it on my own. So we tried many ways to work with our previous partners, but we couldn't get it done. So then we turned to co-op, which is a GPU-based accelerated computing. We cut down on runtime from 3 hours to under 30 minutes, and actually it's 15 minutes plus some integration time. So that's a game change. That's basically a game change, solution change, right? Once you can have a new solution or new optimization within under 30 minutes, people have time to digest the results, review the results, and also people are more willing to start training the models because it's becoming practical for them to do that. That's a huge breakthrough of that one. We also started working on talking to your data. In today and talking to your data, basically we use immediate build bots. And user can go in there using English and type in questions. For example, as a planner or as a business user, they may come in and say, hey, where's my biggest gap? Where do I need to take my action? Today, before AI, you probably have complicated dashboards built. You click through all these filters, and trend, and then you identify gaps, or you build all these metrics, right? But with this chat box, we can type in and say, hey, where do I, what's the biggest gap? What's the biggest change of the supply? What's the biggest change of the demand? Where do I need to take action? And how do I take action? And the solution will be, okay, after I review the new optimization suggestion, I will say, this is a great result. Let's send it. Let's run it. And then the chat box will be smart enough to send that solution to Anaplan, and people will be able to see the real results in Anaplan, and then we can make a decision and then push it downstream. The last one, which is something we started tackling, but we haven't really made a lot of progress in that. This is what I mentioned by choosing the target. Because when we do supply and demand matching, based on the different business need and different dynamics, the goals could be different. Sometimes we wanted to manage how much supply we ship into the channel so that we can manage the channel inventory. Sometimes is, I just wanted to make sure that I can maximize my satisfaction to the customer demand. And sometimes I'm so constrained, I wanted to make sure that my number one goal is to hold my previous commit to the customers too, without too much fluctuation. This one is the one we were still trying to figure out how AI could be smart enough to identify all the different reasons behind these business decisions, and then therefore can suggest or choose or even choose the correct target. Therefore, the optimizer will know how to run the different calculation based on this target. So this is something we just at the beginning. So as I mentioned earlier, AI is a journey. We are at the beginning of it, but we have already made a lot of breakthrough changes, and there is still more to come.
Yeah, this is exciting times, yeah, and really appreciate you sharing the detail and the story behind it. Obviously, your business has evolved dramatically even over the last 5 years. And the technology that you guys have put in place, and I think the roadmap that you showed with the progress over those 5 years to continue to adopt the process and the technology to support the advances and the complexity of your business is really exciting. If we look at this and you talk about the accelerated computation with the allocations process, which is a complex process, right? Because it's going from chips to boards to systems, right? It's not just allocating one of those, that you have to understand that across the entire business. And then you start to think about, well, great, not only can I come up with smart scenarios for allocation, to your point, that the business can then take trade-offs on, but getting to where you can actually have Gen AI, to your point, choose a target, right? Make a recommendation. Hey, here's another scenario for you that we think could be worth looking at. This is what dreams are made of, right? I mean, this is what's pretty exciting. We can start to have the AI engines start to look out and understand your business, right? Understand your goals and objectives, know what your targets are for the quarter, know what your core business objectives are from a strategy perspective, and use that to make recommendations. So we are very excited to be on this journey with you guys. And I think this summary is great. With that, I think we're going to jump into a panelist conversation. So I'll move this on and we can dig on into that.
Thank you, EJ. Thank you, Ye, and thank you, Angela, for that excellent presentation. A lot of things to talk about here. I want to start out by just maybe asking EJ, everything you discussed so far, it sounds great, right? But we all know that it's not easy to roll out. What are the biggest hurdles that companies run into when trying to make AI work for them? EJ?
Yeah, great question, Bob. And I think Angela hit on a few of those as she went through the earlier conversation. But I think one of the most common concerns and questions that we hear when we're talking to customers about integrating analytics into their process is really how they can ramp up their team, right? So it's how do you keep humans in the loop, and how do you create a model in place that the business planners will basically take advantage of those analytics, right? And so a lot of them will call it explainability, right? It's the understanding, where did the numbers come from, what's happening that's making these decisions be made or these recommendations be made. And so one of the things that we work with customers on a lot is, how do you start to integrate analytics into your day-to-day processes, right? So it's not just not just things like optimization, et cetera, or forecasting, but really how do you integrate those forecasting methods or AI methods into the day-to-day process? And I'll give you a real world example, right? It's the ability to understand maybe not just, for example, the forecast, but what's the range of the forecast, right? Sounds simple, but I want to understand what's the historical volatility of demand signal, what's the range look like, and how do I use that historical range to then understand outliers, potentially drive intelligent scenarios on the high end of the range and the low end of the range, right? To start to use that in a way that the business can really interpret the results. Another area of explainability that we hear all the time when we get into businesses that are maybe more CPG oriented is they want to understand how much of the forecast is based on not just baseline and trend, but how much is based on marketing activities, how much is based on pricing changes, how much is happening based on competitive efforts. And these days, obviously, everybody wants to understand what's social media doing to it, right? What's in the news? What are the politicians doing, and how's that going to impact my demand signal? And so, starting to be able to break down and decompose those inputs when you share that with the business users as part of the process, we find is one of the biggest challenges. And if you can do that right, you can really help with adoption.
Yeah, it's great that you're
Yeah.
talking about explainability and the reasons for business decisions, because that's such a big issue in AI today. So thank you for that, EJ. Angela, what is your take on this question about the biggest hurdles?
To me, the biggest hurdle is to make sure that AI-driven results and decisions are correct. And so the users will have confidence in the results. Not only the users, but also the management will have the confidence in the results. I think we have other vendors that approach us, try to sell us software as AI solutions, but when they couldn't explain how they got to the results, I feel like the users will feel AI is just a black box. How do you know? How did the user know that the solution come from a point A to point B? So the solution has to be able to explain how it derived the results. That's really, really important. If users don't have confidence, you cannot really have them transition from spreadsheet to the tool.
Yeah, you don't want the chatbot saying, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." Yay. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with what GJ and Angela said. Just to add on a little bit, about why it's so hard to explain and why it's a black box. Because, if you think about planning is a very complex problem. It takes a lot of reasoning. And as a user, I was doing planning, right? I need to constantly looking at all the different scenarios and data points. Do I have enough supply? When do I not have enough supply? Why do I need to support this customer versus the other customer? All these takes reasoning, and the reasoning, there are a lot of reasons behind it. It requires a lot of double click and researching and reasoning. Today's technology, I don't think we are getting there, but a lot of the solutions we have are not able to do that. So without being able to really follow the planner's, thought process and making that, intelligent decision, it is very hard to get a result that the planner will take a look at the result and just say, hey, this is exactly what I want. So that to me, we will get there hopefully eventually, but it's just, at the beginning, and it's difficult, it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've addressed the output aspect of it, but how do we make sure the AI is actually doing what we want it to do at the very start? What is the best way to test and validate AI-driven planning models? Yay?
To me, the best way to test AI-driven models, one is, I always tell my team to do that is, how often do I need to overrule the AI suggestions? That's what we are doing today. A lot of time we come up with a suggestion, AI does their own thinking, come back with a solution, say, hey, I suggest you do 1, 2, 3, 4. But the planner will look at it and say, no, it does not make sense. It needs to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So how to measure that? So so I think first we need to measure how often do I need to override the decision. Second, I need to understand why do I need to overrule that decision so that the AI, the solution, can learn and get better in the future.
Yeah, here the human factor comes in, as with any discussion of AI. It's always about human intelligence as well as artificial. EJ, what do you think on this question of validating AI-driven planning models?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ye hit a lot of them. I think we just deployed Gen AI as part of our applications at Anaplan. So this is really now the introduction of I'll say being able to ask a question and get an answer back to you based on the data across the platform. So it's a different way of interacting with the data, right? So Bob, most of our users are used to logging into a template or a UI and being able to look at exception dashboards to find issues. Gen AI opens the world for us to where a user can go to their phone or they can go to the application and they can ask a question in natural language. Hey, what's the forecast for this item in October? Or what's the revenue that's being generated for that? What's the trend look like? It's changing the way that we access data for end users, but we really want to make sure that there's no hallucinations or other issues with that. And so as part of that testing, what we've done is we've done a ton of automated testing on the back end to make sure that we actually design and filter what the questions are that can be asked and how those questions be asked. So we have hundreds of questions now that are absolutely trusted, and we can trust the answers are going to be 100% correct. But we're being very careful, frankly, as a vendor, to make sure that we've done that process before we deploy these out to the business. I think it's an interesting balancing act because Gen AI is getting really powerful, and you can kind of let it run, and it will give you back answers that are correct most of the time, right? But for us as an enterprise provider, we have to be really 100% sure. Mm-hmm. And so we've gone down that path to do this pre-tested model that then constrains some of the questions you can ask, at least today, right? There's still hundreds of questions, but it's not everything. But we can guarantee accuracy. I think as the technology evolves, right, that technology will allow us to then evolve that testing process and expose that into further and further capabilities.
Thanks. Those of us that have been in this world of supply chain for as many years as we have heard so many times, countless times, about it. Finally, we're at the end of the era of spreadsheets. It never seems to be the case, though. Now, here comes AI, supposedly to make things easier. Some companies still find themselves stuck in spreadsheets. So what are the most convincing arguments that you can make to convince various teams within the organization to cut loose this legacy application? Angela.
Yeah, trust me, I understand that. Majority of my team, they love spreadsheets. They are all spreadsheet expert. They're so sufficient with spreadsheets. That's the planners we want to hire, right? I think the only way I find it really easy to convince them to switch from spreadsheet to the tool is by running the parallel process. So you have the planners doing their normal job and come up with the results, and you have the AI running the jobs for them and come up with the results. If the results match with each other, over time, they'll believe, why am I spending time on the spreadsheet? AI results is just as good. So running the parallel process, I find it very, very successful for convincing people to get off spreadsheets.
Yeah, what arguments would you make?
Yeah, totally agree. Believe me, I had the same challenge. And every time I work with our technology department trying to come up with a solution, we'll say Excel solution needs to be there because otherwise user adoption is an issue. So the challenge, what I found effective is breaking into smaller problem and trying to tackle smaller problem one at a time. For example, for our customer allocation, first problem we tackle is just get me the data early. And we will first take care of this issue. Get the data fast, right? And also we will say, make sure, okay, AI is not smart enough to come up with a target and suggest solutions. Then maybe I'll have a user dictate, pick the target, but AI will be guided based on the user and try to come up with a solution. So through our journey, we try to simplify and come up with a simple solution first, get some user adoption, then started gradually add on more, sophistication. So I found that to be a more effective approach. So hopefully, eventually, more and more people will choose, as Angela mentioned, that people will switch off for some tasks. They will find out the AI will give them a more effective
and more productive solutions.
So hard to get people to change sometimes, no matter how attractive the solution is. EJ, you have anything to add to this?
I mean, I'll compliment Angela and Ye and the NVIDIA team. They've done a phenomenal job of getting their team to migrate, to your point, over time and really automate processes. And getting out of spreadsheets, getting out of PowerPoints, et cetera, for those kinds of conversations. All of a sudden, not only does it free up your time to make more intelligent decisions, start to use analytics across those pieces, but it also, it puts the data at your fingertips when you start to share that with your executives and have those kind of strategic decision-making kind of conversations, right? I think one of the things that, I'm continually, and I've been in this business for 25 plus years, like continually amazed how many huge Fortune 500 companies are still using Excel. And the problem is not only that it's painful and slow and error prone, blah, 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 but you end up going in front of your executives to make decisions, and they always question if the data that you have in your spreadsheet is accurate. Like, is it really connected to the same set of data that the next person's using? And you end up spending all of your time kind of debating, is it right versus what's the right decision? And if you've got the information in one tool and you can really bring intelligence to those decision-making processes, and everybody understands because you can drill down and see it, then there's a huge value add. I'll comment each other, which is, I mean, look, historically, supply chain planning tools have been notorious as like engines, right? So it's kind of a calculation engine, but people couldn't really do collaboration. They weren't very easy to use. This has been one of the things that's been a key strength for Anaplan over the years, right? At the end of the day, business users are pretty comfortable in it. It's flexible enough for them to still slice and dice and see data the way they want to see it. So if you can give that flexibility and like ease of use comfort level with them, and then inject it with the goodness of an enterprise application, you can kind of get a little bit of best of both worlds. And I think, look, that's the reality, is why Excel is still ubiquitous, is everybody's businesses are, as much as they're very similar, there's always a little bit unique thing here or there that they need to be able to do. And so you've got to give them that balance of flexibility with best in class.
I have yet to see a spreadsheet that actually told me what to do. It's like, here's the data, go with it. It's
right.
And it's not exactly very helpful these days. You talk about the uniqueness of different companies, EJ, which leads me to this next question. And that is, of course, we know not every company works the same way. So AI solutions need to be flexible. How do we make AI-powered planning tools more customizable? EJ.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. And I think it's again, it's a balancing act, right? I think what we've found over the years, and look, it's no secret, Anaplan's been known as a wildly flexible planning platform that can kind of do whatever you want. And I mean, NVIDIA's I think proven that out pretty well in the solutions that they've built out that were very unique for their business, which is very complex. I think that there is a balancing act. What we're finding is, like, can I bring best in class solutions? So can I have pre-built models that bring really intelligent ways of integrating analytics into the day-to-day process, like I said, but still give you the flexibility, both through the analytics tools as well as through the user experience, to support the uniqueness of your individual needs, right? And so I think that flexibility is key. The important part is, to me, how do you start to work really closely with your data science organizations, for example, within your company? Right. So you need a tool that can integrate with those teams and allow them to be creative with their analytic tools and integrate them into the business process. Right. So there's, more often than not, there's a fairly big divide between the data science teams and the business planning teams. And I think that we really want to bridge the gap. I think if you're going to be successful, you have to bridge the gap with those two, so that you can figure out how you inject the goodness that these data science teams are bringing into a day-to-day process, prove value, which means business likes it. And by the way, if business likes it, that means they invest more money back into data science, and data science builds more. And so it's got to be a closed loop process where, we're not doing something for science sake, we're doing it for business sake, and together drive more adoption.
Angela, when you went in search of an AI-driven planning solution, did you find yourself bringing a lot of specificities unique to NVIDIA to the table when you were investigating this whole thing?
Well, actually, I don't think there is a lot of planning tool out there that can serve NVIDIA's needs these days. I think our planning model is so complex that it's so hard for most planning tool companies to really solve our problems. So Anaplan is really, really unique. As EJ said, it's really flexible, and the user interface is so good. My team always tells me that this is a great tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you find yourself having to pivot sometimes. I mean, the whole world of microprocessors and chips and this whole supply chain is just so disrupted, been so disrupted in recent years. You must have to change your plan on the fly sometimes, do you not, in order to accommodate actual conditions in the market?
Yeah, that's a constant challenge. And then, to us, the challenge is our business models has become a lot more complicated than many years ago. From decades ago, when we are just this tiny component of a gaming, for gaming, to now we sell the whole solutions, whole platform. Not only we sell hardware, chips and boards, and we also sell supply, systems and the support and software on top of that. There's a whole solution on there. So you can imagine how complicated our planning model has becoming. And also, everyone has noticed, our business volume has really, really exploded. And you can, so the lot was so much, and we have a lot of shortage in different for a lot of products. So then you have to deal with constant this demand. Demand is high, supply is short, and a lot of escalation, a lot of moving pieces. So yeah, it's a lot of challenge to the whole planning team. And so for Anaplan, back, when we were talking about this model, so the way to basically Angela's point, we actually try to work all the different partners, and it's very hard to come up with any partner to have an out-of-box solution that could meet our needs. Yeah, what we found was working, which has been a pretty successful model, is we leverage, Anaplan's flexibility. It's a great tool, offer very flexible user interfaces, and we add on the co-op as, some engine and work together. We found out to be a good path. So I think we are on the way to build a great solution that could address the challenges that we are facing today.
Thank you. At this point, let's bring the audience in with their questions too. And even as we are answering the questions that have already come in, audience members, please be encouraged to continue to submit your questions by clicking on that Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to as many of them as we can, time permitting. But let me start out with this one, because this really does ask us to go from the world of theory to the world of practice and kind of where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. The question is, what is the most impressive real-world AI example that you have seen recently? Angela, what do you think?
I'm very grateful to work for a company like NVIDIA. So we get to see a lot of great demos and great, the newest technologies. So the latest one I saw that I felt like really impressed was NVIDIA's, we call it Toy Jensen, TJ. So, so what the tool does is, if you feed Toy TJ the PDF, you can feed 20 pages PDF or 50 pages PDF with some summary of for example, a company's earnings results. It's very complex. It's very long, tedious, and the software AI tool will come up with a video with Toy Jensen as the character, telling you the summary of this company's earnings. And it summarized the PDF really well, and it talks really well. It's really fun to watch. So that was my latest, most fun AI, real world AI example.
Mm-hmm. Gee, AI can be fun. How about that? EJ, what do you think in terms of the most impressive thing you've seen out there in the so-called real world?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there are a lot of cool things that we're seeing out there. How many of them are real? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, along the lines of what Angela said. I mean, I think the one that I've seen that is really impressive is the ability, again, to to bring together, I'll call it like proprietary data, our market research, for example, and how we position things, along with kind of business understanding from the internet and from other sources, and be able to create content for business conversations, right? So creating my PowerPoints for me that can say, great, here's a curated version of the presentation that you might want to go present to a semiconductor customer that tells the story very specifically for them, morphs those, but actually creates the PowerPoints dynamically for you, right? I mean, the tools out there for that are becoming really quite good, and it's pretty impressive. And I think it's something that as we build out our technology, it's something that we're aspiring to, because I think our latest version of Gen AI is, look, we understand we need to let the planner be able to present the data effectively to the business, right? And so away from just, hey, I've always got the same reports, right? I've got XYZ reports and I'm going to show them those things. That's great. Those are powerful because people get comfortable with what they are and how to track them. But we believe in the near future, we're going to be able to have, our Gen AI capabilities be able to publish reports for customers dynamically. Hey, today I'm really interested in tariffs. I want to be able to show all the products that are going to be impacted by tariffs in this region, in this region, this region. What's that going to do to my capacity? What's going to do to my demand? What's that going to do to my margin, right? Gen AI should be able to create those kinds of reports for you dynamically. And the question you can ask, so you think of it like Gen AI supported scenario management, right? So instead of you having to create that scenario manually and go pick all those items based on attribution, use Gen AI to go pull that kind of stuff. And so I think those are like very tangible, real world things that I think we can do in supply chain quickly.
And only getting better with the rapid advances in Gen AI. So it'd be exciting to see what happens going forward. Here's a question I'd love to hear answered, because we just kind of touched on it earlier in this presentation. The questioner says, AI is great at crunching numbers, but people still make the final call, at least for now. How do we find the right balance between automation and human judgment? EJ.
I mean, I think it's a good question. I mean, automation is a very hot topic right now, right? And I think it's this combination of, it ends up being human plus machine right now. I think what we're trying to do is make the humans more efficient, right? So I don't think we're going to replace human decision making, but when you've got, so let's just use anomaly detection as an example, right? So we are loading in data daily or real time into the system. We know what your actual lead time is for a component, for example. We're using that for all kinds of calculations to generate inventory plans, to generate fulfillments, et cetera. We've got your standard lead time that's probably coming from master data. It might say it's 7 days. The actual lead time changed over the last 5 months. The average actual lead time now is 14 days. Should the system automatically update that, or should it notify the business users? So I think we're starting to find ways to say, great, hey, we can use anomaly detection. We can share these outliers with the business and let them review those things. And then they can start to make decisions. Hey, great, every time I see something and that's changed more than X, instead of just giving me a report every day and I have to pick which things I want to approve, great, I'm okay with making changes, on anything that's changed more than 100% or more than 50%. So let thresholds come into play, et cetera. And I think there's this kind of progression towards true automation that's going to continue to go forward over time. I think Angela hit on this earlier on, right? You've got the business has to believe it. It can't just be a total black box. But once they start to believe it and they start seeing the same things over and over again, they're okay with automating, decisions that they don't have to do every day, and they know it's right. And then great, at the end of the week or the end of the day or the end of the month, they can always look at a report and what got automated and make sure they're not missing something. And trust me, over time, they'll start to adopt that more.
Yeah. So much of AI depends on generating content based on what it's learned of what's come before, though. And you come upon something new and unusual, I think maybe a human expert needs to go there, and some human instinct might still be needed in order to determine how to react. This questioner wants to know, if a company is new to AI, but wants to start using it in their planning, what should we tackle first? Angela, what's your advice there?
My advice is start with simple problems first. Start with easier problem first. Start with problems that repetitive, you have a lot of data and a very predictable those problems are easier to prove that AI can add value, can automate first. And when they see the result is correct, they will start to use AI, and human resources can move to more complicated problems. So I feel like start with easy and simple problems first.
Mm-hmm. EJ, what would be your advice on that first move you make if you want to tackle AI for the first time?
Yeah, I think start is the right answer.
Yeah.
Do something, progress over perfection, right? As they say. I think I said this earlier already, but I think that the key thing is figure out. We talk to customers all the time about end-to-end supply chain planning, right? So everything from pricing, trade promotion planning, sales pipeline integration, demand planning, supply planning, capacity planning, et cetera. And people ask all the time, Bob, where should I start? And this is not just with AI, but generally across the spectrum. And my answer to them usually is, one, where do you have the team that's the most ready for change, right? So organizationally, where do you have a team that's interested in it, that has the wherewithal to work in that model? They're curious, intellectually curious about analytics, right? I think that makes a huge difference. And I think as you're hiring people, you should be thinking about hiring people that have those kind of skills and or interests. I think that's a big thing. I think, on the flip side of that, and I've had this conversation tons of times with senior executives, the reality is that the planners that businesses are hiring these days, coming in from college, they're used to doing everything on their phone. They're used to AIs embedded everywhere, and they expect to be able to have AI involved. So the flip of that is, if you're a company that's growing and you're bringing in a younger workforce around planning, you better be doing AI now, else you're not going to be able to keep your workforce around, right? They're not going to be interested. They're not going to be excited, et cetera. And so I think that's another big piece that plays into it.
Psychological element. Interesting. I mean, throughout the history of technology implementations, there's always been that thing that find your internal champions in your organization who will bring it to the fore. And in this case, it might be more recent hires and younger people. Interesting. You should point that out. Okay, so this questioner is saying we have many third-party integrations, and who doesn't, as I'm sure you do as well. How do you address security? We really haven't touched on that too much right now before, so let's do it right now. Yay? What is the security issue?
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question because that's something we face constantly as well. Security, you almost think about security and AI. Security means you need to restrict information from certain people. But for an AI tool and to really work well, it needs the more data it has, the better it could become, or smarter it could become. So these two actually fundamentally, they ask for two different things. But it's very important. You cannot just expand on AI without a security in mind. For example, today we have a lot of sensitive data floating around, let's say, within the company. And actually, yeah, it is dangerous. We want to make it secure. But today, actually, people, if you don't have enough knowledge or bandwidth or business background, you actually do not necessarily have the capability of extracting really sensitive information from these data. But if you have AI without security, these people who do not really have the technology can type in, oh, what's the next big project? What's the revenue? What's that? Yeah. It will be the impact, the damage will be really, really big, much bigger than before. So that's why security is super important. So what we are constantly trying to balance between how to contain the data, access of the data, to how to also maximize the capability of the AI. So this is going to be an ongoing issue and challenge people need to deal with. AI without security, in my opinion, will create more damage maybe in the future down the road.
Yeah. EJ, how does Anaplan approach the whole issue, both from the standpoint of building it into your own model and ensuring your individual customers are completely secure in the use of your solution?
Yeah, Bob, we did a survey. We commissioned a survey, actually, I should say, last year to really understand the buying patterns of our customers and what are the drivers when they look at technology around AI and supply chain planning. And interestingly enough, but not surprising, security was literally the number one thing, right? So I think this is top of mind for every single IT organization and every single, frankly, company out there that's working. And I think it is something that you have to have really good management controls around. Yale nailed it, which is the thing that AI does. It changes the paradigm in how you access data, right? So at the same time, you want to be able to have the person that's appropriate that has access to be able to understand the impact of changes. So great, where do I have the biggest gap in my forecast? In July. Great. Oh, these two items have the biggest gap in the forecast in July. Great. Do I have any promotions that are planned in July or that we've used in prior Julys that we could use to help improve the demand signal to improve those pieces? That's a great question that you want somebody with the right access to be able to ask, right? Mm-hmm. But there's some companies that say, no, I don't want the demand planning team to just be able to ask the system if there's promotions. I need them to come and ask me or this other team. And I think that this is a fine line that businesses are going to have to go through and think about as they design these systems, right? Anaplan has built in fine layers of security that allow you to control it and manage it and not. But at the same time, we do give you the capability, if you want it, to truly connect those decisions, right? And so what we find is this balancing act between access to connected decision-making versus, who owns what data. Right. And I think there are certain things, and you hit on them, right? Do we really want to let everybody in the world figure out what our top projects are or what our profit is across the overall business, right? There's stuff that needs to continue to always be secure. But things like what are the promotions that are coming and, their ability to move them forward or back, those are great questions to have systems like Gen AI help you ask quickly and then facilitate a conversation to say, hey, great, how do I make a faster decision around how I'm going to make an impact on the overall business. And so I think
it is an absolutely critical question. Unfortunately, folks, we were just about out of time. We have time for just one final question. I'm going to direct it to each of you. And it is this: where is AI in enterprise planning headed? What's the next big thing we should be watching for? And what should our audience be doing about it? Angela?
The next thing, I think it's going to be more vendors, more software vendors like Anaplan, using more AI, offering more AI solutions. I feel like if a software company that they don't have an AI solution, they're going to be obsolete. All the business will be asking, what is your AI solution in this case? What is your utilization of AI? How do you help us to solve the problems? If AI is not in the solution set, I don't think that vendor will survive this day and age.
Yeah. Yay, what do you think? Where's it all going? What are we watching for? What should we be doing about it?
Yeah, the momentum of AI is picking up. AI itself is evolving. Business user also needs to evolve. AI is going to get smarter and take on more tasks. So for the business user, it is going to be a lot more important for them to understand why than knowing how to do different things. I expect the AI planner to become smarter in the future, then transition from a co-planner to a real planner. So it's coming. So embrace it. And it's coming. Yeah.
EJ, last word to you.
All right. 3 things. 1, do something. Don't just wait. Make progress. 2, get hands-on. Go look at things. Go see what it really looks like. So dig in. And 3, self-serving. Come look at Anaplan and we'll show you what this really looks like in the real world. I think it's important to not just talk about it, to visualize it and understand what does this look like day in and day out, and how could you actually use it in your real life?
Well, Angela, Ye, and EJ, thank you all for that fantastic presentation. A lot of information was conveyed in the last hour. And audience, thank you so much for your participation as well. Here's something for you, and as kind of a reward for your listening. Are you ready to empower your decision making? Explore Anaplan's supply chain solutions and see how AI can drive your next move. There is a QR code that you can snap a picture of if you have your camera ready. If not, don't worry about it. This will be provided to all attendees at this webinar upon its conclusion, which is right now. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Skip.